My brain sent the signal. My arms reached out to catch myself. But my legs did not respond in time. Those were the exact words Arthur used to describe the afternoon he tripped on a completely flat sidewalk, and found himself staring at the concrete, completely stunned by his own body. He sat in his kitchen that evening, ice resting on his knee, looking out at that exact same patch of pavement. He had spent 40 years keeping himself strong, tracking his steps, watching his diet, never missing a routine. Yet in one single half-second, he felt something he had never expected. A quiet betrayal. And the worst part? He had done everything right. Have you ever felt that exact same heavy realization? That sudden, sinking moment when your own body starts following a rulebook, it quietly rewrote without telling you? What if the shifts you are most afraid of are not about sudden illness, or dramatic decline, but about your nervous system simply adjusting the speed at which it delivers instructions? The research confirms it. And I see it again and again in adults over 80. Muscle power declines nearly twice as fast as raw strength. Now, strength is how much weight you can lift slowly. Like pulling a heavy grocery bag out of your car trunk. Power, on the other hand, is how fast you can generate that force when it actually matters. Like yanking your hand away from a hot stove, or shifting your weight in an instant to catch yourself before a fall. Arthur's legs were not weak. They were slow. And that single distinction, it changes everything. We tend to blame ourselves for missed steps, for slower reflexes, for that sudden heaviness in our knees when we need to move quickly. We assume we are just getting old, or worse, that we have somehow failed some unspoken test of fitness. But here is the truth that most fitness guides completely overlook. This is not a failure of effort. It is a biological wiring shift. Your fast-twitch muscle fibers, the ones responsible for sudden, explosive movements, naturally begin to withdraw as your body conserves energy for steady, everyday motion. Your brain still fires the exact same urgent command, but the signal now travels through a pathway that has simply grown longer with time. That tiny delay is not a flaw. It is simply your system operating on a new schedule. And here is where almost everyone goes wrong, including people who are already doing everything right. They double down on heavy, slow resistance training, thinking it will fix the hesitation, when what their nervous system actually needs is quick, controlled movement practice. Once you stop fighting that half-second delay and start working with it, you begin to realize something important. This is not the end of your independence. It is just a clear, honest signal to change how you prepare your body each day. You stop training only for slow endurance, and you start practicing safe, rapid responses. You stop waiting for your system to warn you, and you begin giving it the exact rhythm it actually needs, right now. And yet, that same wiring shift does not just live in your legs. It quietly begins to ripple into 3 separate systems that work together, every single minute, to keep you upright. When your reaction time slows, your eyes take a fraction longer to track changes in your environment, making uneven surfaces look deceptively smooth, until you are already on them. Your inner ear, that quiet internal compass that once reported your exact position in real time, starts sending updates that arrive just a moment too late. And the tiny pressure sensors in the soles of your feet, which once read the floor like a detailed map, begin sending softer, delayed messages that your brain has to work harder to interpret. That is when a perfectly even hallway starts to feel uncertain. That is when reaching for a countertop or a chair becomes a quiet daily habit, instead of an occasional safety check. And once you see exactly how that inner balance system begins to recalibrate, you will finally understand why balance is not one single system you either have or lose. It is 3 separate systems. And you can still train all of them, at any age, starting this week. You now know that balance isn't a single switch. It's a coordinated partnership between 3 systems that must communicate in real time, just to keep you upright. And here is what almost nobody realizes, until it happens to them. Those 3 systems don't fail all at once. They quietly drift, out of sync. Let me show you exactly how that drift happens. Because it is the hidden reason so many confident, active adults suddenly start gripping countertops, avoiding dark hallways, or skipping walks they have loved for decades. The physiology is actually straightforward. Vision, inner ear function, and the tiny pressure sensors in your feet, they all begin to slow down after 80. But they slow down at different speeds. Your eyes might still see perfectly well in bright daylight, but they take noticeably longer to adjust when you step from a sunny kitchen into a shaded entryway. Your inner ear, that delicate, fluid-filled chamber that tells your brain exactly which way your head is tilting, becomes slightly less responsive to subtle shifts in your posture. And those nerve endings in the soles of your feet, the ones that used to read every texture, every slope, every loose edge of a rug, they start sending signals that are just a fraction of a second behind reality. Let me tell you about Margaret. She was 81, fiercely independent, and she had walked the exact same neighborhood loop every single morning for 15 years. But over the course of one quiet winter, she began skipping the longer stretches. She started telling herself the weather was just too chilly. Or her knees were acting up. Or she simply had other errands to run. The truth was different. The cracked pavement she used to navigate without even looking had suddenly become a source of low-grade, constant anxiety. She wasn't afraid of falling. She was afraid of that split-second uncertainty, that tiny, quiet moment where her brain wasn't quite sure if her foot was planted firmly enough to trust her full weight. So she shrank her world. Just a few blocks at a time. On any given morning, Margaret felt completely fine. She poured her coffee, checked her mail, moved through her own home without a single conscious thought about her footing. But what she didn't realize was the hidden toll her nervous system was quietly paying, just to keep her steady. Her brain was working triple overtime. Constantly compensating for those delayed signals. Constantly patching together a picture of stability from information that no longer arrived in real time. And that invisible mental effort? It adds up in ways nobody talks about. It drains your energy by mid-morning. It clouds your focus when you are trying to follow a simple conversation. It leaves you unexpectedly exhausted after a routine trip to the grocery store. And here is the part that catches almost everyone off guard. That shrinking doesn't happen because you are weak. It happens because your nervous system is trying to protect you from a risk it can no longer predict with confidence. Your body isn't failing you. It is negotiating with you, trading a little independence for a little certainty, one careful step at a time. But what happens when that carefulness starts costing you more than just a familiar walking route? What happens when the same mental fatigue that makes you avoid uneven sidewalks also starts making you avoid crowded restaurants, busy family dinners, and the conversations you used to genuinely look forward to? Because the third change after 80 doesn't focus on your muscles or your balance at all. It quietly begins to erode your ability to stay connected to the people around you. And it does it so gradually that you might not even realize you are stepping back until the room has already gone quiet. What if the reason you feel inexplicably exhausted after a family dinner, even one you genuinely enjoyed, has nothing to do with your age, your health, or how much you love the people in that room? Do you notice that lively restaurants, with clinking glasses and overlapping conversations, leave you completely drained, long before the meal is even finished? What if you are not simply losing your social spark as you age, but your brain is quietly running a mental marathon, just to follow what everyone else hears without effort? This is the third change that reshapes daily life after 80. And it is almost never about losing your hearing. It is about losing your ability to filter. After 80, the brain centers responsible for separating a single voice from background noise begin to slow their processing speed. Your ears still catch the sound waves perfectly well, but your auditory processing system now has to work significantly harder to sort through the clutter. Every humming refrigerator. Every nearby table conversation. Every chair scraping across tile. Your nervous system begins treating them all as equal competition for your attention. So your brain starts pulling extra cognitive energy from your focus, your patience, your short-term memory, just to piece together what was actually said. Let me tell you about David. He was 82. A retired history professor who had spent his entire career speaking clearly to packed lecture halls, without missing a single beat. But 2 years ago, he quietly stopped attending his granddaughter's weekend gatherings. He told his family he just preferred quiet weekends now. That large crowds were never really his style. The real reason sat completely hidden beneath those polite words. He was exhausted. Not physically, mentally. By the time cake was served, he had already spent 3 hours straining to track 4 separate conversations at once, his brain spending more energy on decoding than on anything else. He would drive home, sink into his favorite armchair, and feel too foggy to read, too drained to return a phone call, too tired to do anything but rest. He wasn't pulling away because he loved them less. He was stepping back because his nervous system was protecting him from a cognitive overload it could no longer sustain. And here is what makes this shift so quietly dangerous. It never announces itself with ringing ears or sudden silence. It announces itself as fatigue, as a sudden preference for solitude, as the slow, almost invisible shrinking of your social calendar, one politely declined invitation at a time. You start convincing yourself you just don't have the energy for people anymore. But what if the real issue isn't your desire to connect, it's your brain's ability to process those connections without charging a heavy mental toll? Once that hidden fatigue becomes your new daily baseline, it begins to quietly override other signals your body used to send clearly. Your brain operates on a fixed cognitive budget. And when the outside world is constantly drawing heavily on that account, the quieter internal messages get whatever is left over. Thirst. Hunger. The gentle nudge to drink a glass of water. After 80, that leftover balance is smaller than it has ever been. These signals don't disappear overnight. They simply get drowned out by the mental noise your brain is already managing every single hour of every single day. And when your own body stops sending clear, reliable warnings about what it needs to function, that is exactly where the fourth change takes hold. It happens completely in the background. No pain. No sudden drama. But it quietly drains your strength, clouds your judgment, and leaves you wondering why you feel weaker, even when you think you are eating enough. Because the most dangerous warnings after 80 aren't the ones that shout. They are the ones you simply stop hearing. Before we move into the next part, if what you have heard so far is making sense of something you have been quietly wondering about, take just a second to like and share this video with someone who could use this kind of clarity. Your thoughts and questions genuinely matter to me, so drop a comment below and let me know what is resonating, or what you would like me to dig into further. I read everything you share. And if you want to make sure these sessions find their way to you without any searching, subscribe to the channel right now and hit that bell icon. That way, the next piece of the picture is always waiting for you. Now let us keep going, because what comes next is where it really starts to click. You already know that the quietest warnings are the ones your body stops sending. But what happens when those missing signals start quietly draining your strength, without you even realizing it? Have you ever gone hours without drinking water? Not because you forgot, but because you simply did not feel thirsty until your head started to ache, or your legs felt unsteady? Do you find yourself skipping lunch because hunger never quite knocks, only to crash with sudden exhaustion by mid-afternoon? What if your appetite and thirst aren't fading because something is wrong with you, but because your internal messaging system is simply turning the volume down? After 80, the hypothalamus, that quiet control center in your brain that translates physical needs into clear, urgent signals, gradually loses its sensitivity. It does not shut off. It just starts sending softer, delayed notes, instead of sharp alarms. You can be running low on fluids and feel perfectly fine, right up until you stand up too quickly and feel that sudden, dizzy wave of weakness. You can skip 2 meals in a row and not feel a single pang of hunger, only to wake up the next morning feeling heavy, foggy, and noticeably lighter on the scale. This is where the hidden cycle begins. And it is the exact reason so many otherwise healthy adults experience unexplained fatigue, sudden weight loss, or muscle weakness that routine blood tests simply cannot explain. When you miss water, your blood volume drops slightly, your circulation slows, and your muscles receive less oxygen with every movement. When you miss meals, your body starts breaking down its own protein reserves for energy, quietly weakening the very fibers you need to stay upright and independent. You are not suddenly getting frilier. You are just operating on a delayed fuel schedule, your dashboard light staying dark long after the tank has already run low. Let me tell you about Helen. She was 83, lived alone, and prided herself on her independence. She always said she ate when she was hungry and drank when she was thirsty. Over 6 months, she lost 11 pounds. Her doctor ran blood work, checked her thyroid, adjusted her vitamins, but everything came back normal. Helen felt frustrated and quietly worried she was fading faster than anyone could explain. When we looked closer at her daily rhythm, we found the exact gap nobody was watching for. She was not eating poorly. She was just waiting for signals that no longer arrived on time. Some mornings, she would skip breakfast entirely because her stomach felt empty, but not demanding. She would forget her water bottle on the counter until dinner, assuming a single cup of tea was enough. Her body was not breaking down. It was operating on a muted frequency. We did not force her to eat larger portions. We did not add high-calorie shakes or strict diet plans. We simply taught her to eat and drink on a gentle, predictable rhythm. Small meals every 4 hours. A full glass of water upon waking. Another mid-morning. Another late afternoon. 3 weeks later, Helen called to say she had made herself a proper breakfast, for the first time in months. Not because she was hungry, but because it was 8 o'clock. And that was simply what 8 o'clock meant now. The unexplained fatigue lifted. The dizziness disappeared. Her energy returned to a steady, manageable baseline. She did not need more food. She needed a timetable. And here is the truth that changes everything for people over 80. Waiting for your body to ask is no longer a reliable strategy. Your internal messenger is still working. But it speaks in whispers now, not shouts. When you shift from reactive listening to proactive scheduling, you stop running on empty, and start giving your cells the steady, consistent support they actually need to keep you strong. But this quiet signal loss does something else. Something most people never connect, until it has already reshaped their daily life. When you stop hearing your own hunger, cooking for yourself starts to feel like a chore instead of a comfort. You skip the kitchen more often. You eat standing up instead of sitting down. You stop setting the table for two, because it feels like unnecessary effort for just one plate. That gradual withdrawal from your own kitchen routine does not just affect your nutrition. It quietly pulls you away from the rituals that kept you connected to others for decades. And once those shared meals start disappearing from your week, the room does not just feel quieter. It starts feeling emptier. Because the fifth change is not about what your body stops telling you. It is about what happens to your world when you stop gathering around the table, and why your circle begins to shrink, exactly when you need it most. What if the quiet that has slowly settled into your week isn't loneliness, and it isn't indifference, but your nervous system making a decision you never consciously agreed to? Do you ever sit in your favorite chair after a phone call that felt surprisingly short, wondering why your energy drained so quickly, even though you genuinely enjoyed hearing that voice? What if making new connections doesn't feel impossible because you've lost your social spark, but because your brain has quietly started rationing its emotional reserves to protect you from a kind of overload you never even saw coming? This is the fifth change that quietly reshapes life after 80. And it happens for two reasons that almost nobody names out loud. First, the practical reality of aging simply rearranges your calendar. Close friends move. Peers face their own health journeys. Family members get pulled into demanding routines. And the regular gatherings that once anchored your week gradually fade into the background. Second, your nervous system starts treating social interaction differently. Every conversation, every group dinner, every extended visit now requires more cognitive fuel. To track faces. To filter background noise. To regulate emotions. To manage the hidden effort of simply staying fully present. When your brain operates on a tighter daily energy budget, it begins to prioritize depth over breadth, without asking your permission. You do not suddenly stop loving people. You just start conserving your emotional reserves for the few connections that actually refill you, instead of quietly drain you. Let me tell you about Clara. She was 84. She had hosted a weekly dinner table for 20 years, knew every neighbor on her street, and prided herself on never missing a birthday or an anniversary. But over the last 2 years, her living room stayed quiet longer. She stopped hosting the monthly card games. She let the neighborhood group chat go silent. She told her daughter she was simply taking it easier now. But the truth sat much heavier than that. She wasn't lonely in an empty room. She was exhausted in a crowded one. Tired of the performance. She had slowly realized she was spending more energy maintaining 20 casual connections than she had left to truly show up for the 3 that actually mattered. When Clara finally stopped trying to keep the whole neighborhood in her daily orbit, and started investing deeply in just a handful of people, she didn't just feel less drained. For the first time in 2 years, she felt genuinely seen. And here is the part that catches almost everyone off guard. This natural shrinking isn't abandonment. It is adaptation. Your brain is quietly editing your social list, keeping only the threads that still carry meaning, while gently letting go of the noise that used to fill your schedule. But there is a line you have to recognize, before it crosses you. Peaceful solitude is intentional. It restores your energy. Dangerous isolation is accidental. It slowly drains it. When you stop showing up to the gatherings that used to define your week, you also quietly lose the gentle accountability they provided. The friend who noticed when your voice sounded weaker on the phone. The neighbor who checked in when your curtains stayed closed all morning. The family member who reminded you to drink water, or take your evening walk. Without those quiet check-ins, the other changes we have already talked about, the slower reflexes, the fading balance, the muted hunger signals, they begin to operate completely off the radar. That is exactly where the line between healthy rest and quiet disappearance gets crossed. Because the fifth change doesn't happen because the world forgets you. It happens when you start mistaking your body's honest need for recovery as permission to fade away. So I have to ask you directly. If your shrinking circle is actually your nervous system asking for simplicity, how do you protect yourself from the quiet trap of stepping back too far? Because once you understand the difference between intentional stillness and accidental withdrawal, you unlock something most people never realize is still possible at this stage of life. The power to carefully curate your connections, instead of mourning the ones you have lost. And that exact shift is where your daily control finally returns. In everything that follows, I am going to show you exactly how to prepare for all 5 of these changes, before they catch you off guard. The simple, steady rhythms that keep your body grounded, your mind sharp, and your world meaningfully connected, no matter what your calendar looks like. Because every change we have talked about shares one quiet, undeniable truth. Your body was never working against you. It was always trying to protect you. The only real question left is whether you will learn its new language. Before it starts making decisions without you. You now know exactly what is shifting beneath the surface. But knowledge alone does not change your daily rhythm. Preparation does. Before we talk about what that actually looks like, please remember. If you manage heart conditions, joint limitations, or medications that affect blood pressure or fluid balance, loop your care team into these adjustments first. Small, steady movements and scheduled hydration are safe for most people, but your health picture is unique. And professional guidance ensures you move forward with confidence. The most important shift right now is not about fighting what your body is doing. It is about aligning your daily habits with the new rhythm it has already chosen. Let me show you how Arthur is living this out. 6 months after that afternoon on the sidewalk, Arthur did not suddenly regain the reflexes of his 30s. He stopped trying to. Instead, he built a quiet, predictable routine around the wiring shift. He added 2 short bursts of quick, controlled practice to his day. Standing up from his favorite armchair just a fraction faster. Deliberately shifting his weight from heel to toe while holding the counter. Practicing a gentle reach and return, not to build muscle mass, but to retrain his nervous system to recognize that half-second window between thought and action. But here is the part most people miss until they actually try it. You are not just exercising. You are literally upgrading your internal signal speed. For his balance, he stopped waiting for a stumble to remind him to pay attention. He built microchecks into movements he used to do on autopilot. Pausing for 3 full seconds before stepping off a curb. Keeping his hand lightly on the wall in dimly lit hallways. Swapping thin house slippers for shoes with stable, grippy soles, even indoors. He stopped calling these concessions. He started calling them what they really were. Tactical adjustments that keep his vision, his inner ear, and his foot sensors speaking the same language again. When it comes to social gatherings, he protects his mental energy like the finite resource it is. He picks the quieter booth at restaurants. He steps outside for 2 minutes of stillness when the background noise swells. And he leaves an hour earlier, without apology. You do not owe anyone your exhaustion. For hunger and thirst, Arthur stopped waiting for a whisper that never comes. He set a gentle kitchen timer. A full glass of water when he wakes. A small handful of almonds at 10. A proper lunch at 12. He is not overeating. He is fueling on a schedule that matches his internal reality, not the one he remembers from his 60s. And for his social world, he quietly stopped counting names on a calendar, and started measuring depth in the room. He invests in the 3 people who actually listen when he speaks. Who notice when his voice sounds tired. Who will gently remind him to take his walk when the afternoon slump hits. He lets the rest fade. Without guilt. Quiet the noise. Clear the clutter. Choose depth. This framework is not about reversing time. It is about working with the body you have right now, exactly as it is. And this is where the real shift begins. When you stop fighting the delay in your muscles, you start practicing the response. When you stop pretending your balance is automatic, you start building quiet safeguards. When you stop forcing yourself through crowded rooms, you start protecting your mental clarity. When you stop waiting for hunger or thirst to arrive, you start feeding your cells on time. And when you stop measuring connection by volume, you start nurturing the relationships that actually sustain you. Because every change we have talked about shares one quiet, undeniable truth. Your body was never working against you. It was always trying to protect you. If even one thing you heard today gave you a clearer picture, or handed you one small, practical step you can actually take tomorrow morning, please like and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. A parent, a spouse, a neighbor, a friend who has been quietly struggling and does not yet know that a small, overlooked habit might be the missing piece. Your feedback means more than you know, so leave your thoughts or your questions in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to see to take that very first step. If you want to stay connected and never miss what we uncover next, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon. There is always another quiet pattern worth decoding together. Thank you for being here. Now take what you have learned today, and let it work for you.